Hey y'all, Lila here with Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today's Tumbler tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created this glittered striped rainbow tumbler. Like always, all of my materials will be listed in my description below, including some direct links and coupon codes. This tumbler was super fun to make and I really just got out of my comfort zone. I know it looks simple, but I just had a lot of fun with these colors. I'm not usually a big bright color person when it comes to tumblers, but this is really fun and I think I'm going to start making more like neon bright color tumblers. So if you guys do like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget you can find me on my socials, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. The tumbler that I decided to use was a 30-ounce skinny stainless steel tumbler. I wanted a big tumbler because I wanted this to be big and bright. So I'm just sanding this tumbler down with a 180 grit sanding block. I do this for all of my tumblers before I design my tumblers. Once I finish sanding that, I take my 91% alcohol and I wipe this around my entire tumbler with 91% alcohol. I'm making sure I'm wiping it down very well, and then I just dry it with a clean and dry paper towel. So for the first half of this tumbler, or one side of this tumbler, I am using my printed vinyl from the Vinyl Cottage. This is Leopard Cloud Rainbows. This is actually the Vinyl Cottage's Freebie Friday print. So every Friday, the Vinyl Cottage has a Freebie Friday print day, and it's an exclusive print. With a minimum purchase, you receive a free print, and it's exclusive. So this is the free print for this Friday. So go ahead and check out the Vinyl Cottage and spend your $15 and get this free print today. And I will also have a coupon code linked in my description below for the Vinyl Cottage. So since I am placing this vinyl on the tumbler, I'm going to measure around my tumbler, and this tumbler measured about 10 inches. I did round up. I'd rather the vinyl print be too big than not be big enough and not fit around the tumbler. So what I do is I'm taking my cutting tool from Joann Fabric. I'll try to find one from Amazon and link that in my description. And I'm just cutting down basically 5 inches of this vinyl. So it is 10 inches diameter. I want half of that on my tumbler, so I'm first trimming off the edges, and then I'm cutting to make this print 5 inches wide, so this will be half of my tumbler. And then I also measured the height of my tumbler, and then I cut to size the height of my tumbler as well. I didn't want too much overhang. As you can see, I think the height was like 8 inches maybe, so I just trimmed that down as you see here. I have this cool little trick. Whenever I place my vinyl on my tumblers, I take a piece of tape and I just try to place that on my tumbler as straight as possible, and that's going to be where I start placing my vinyl. So that tape should be straight. I'm now trying so hard to take the backing off my vinyl. I do have nails, so it's hard to peel it. But all I'm doing is I'm applying this vinyl using what we call the hinge method. So what we do is we peel off a part of this backing, and then we cut a part of the backing, and we let a part of that vinyl piece, which is sticky, stick on the tumbler. Once that is nice and straight, I press down on the tumbler with the vinyl, and then I remove the backing as I'm pressing, and I'm pressing down very hard. So you'll see I am pressing down, and I'm just scooting my fingers along that tumbler, pressing down on the tumbler not to get any air bubbles, and that's slowly removing that backing from the tumbler. And that piece of tape really helps align that tumbler, or that vinyl piece, to be very straight on the tumbler. And even though this vinyl is very easy to use and it is very flexible, sometimes you will get some air bubbles. All you do is you take your X-Acto knife or a sharp blade and you press that air bubble in the middle, and it pops the air bubble, and you press down using either your hand or a squeegee tool. I do this around the tumbler, and once I press them all down, we're ready for the next step. And now let's clean up this vinyl on this tumbler by using my Wicked Shimmer cup edging tool. I've used this tool so many times. This is perfect. All it is a blade mounted on a piece of like plastic or something. And you just take the blade and you spin your tumbler around on the bottom and you just remove that excess vinyl. I like to remove the smallest amount of vinyl on the bottom and then the smallest amount of vinyl on the top. The cool thing about this tool is that there's some spacers that comes with this tool, so you can make your tool to cut higher or lower. And this is how it should look so far. So now that I have the vinyl on, we are going to tape off this vinyl because now we're going to lay the paint and the glitter to make those lines. All I'm doing is adding my painter's tape around my tumbler just to the edges of that vinyl, because when I add my paint and my lines, I want this protective border so the glitter and the paint and the design doesn't transfer over to my vinyl. So it's just as easy as that. Now that I have all of my design basically taped off, I'm going to take my painter's tape that I have on hand, and I'm taking all different sizes from 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, and I'm going to place this painter's tape on my stainless steel part. This is how I'm going to receive those different size lines. And the first line that I'm placing, or the first piece of tape that I'm placing, I'm making sure to line that up exactly to where that vinyl is placed. So that's going to be my starting point, and that's going to make sure that these lines are straight. So as long as you have that piece of tape exactly straight around where the vinyl starts and ends, then you should be good to go when it comes to placing the tape around your tumbler. And I just randomly placed these pieces of tape around the tumbler. I didn't really think about, the sizes, which size bumped up to what size. I just wanted those lines to all be a different size to just really make it fun and see how it turned out. This part was very tedious, and I think this was probably the longest part of the entire tumbler because I really wanted those lines to be straight. So I personally think I was overthinking this. Sometimes whenever you lay stuff down on a tumbler or you design anything, you just start overthinking, and these lines look so crooked, but I think it turned out. And also this spot, or this space, is 5 inches, approximately 5 inches wide. So I did kind of cut those pieces of tape a little bigger, and then all I did was cut off that excess and place that excess on the other border tape, if that makes sense. Make sure to leave one of the stripes blank or the stainless steel exposed, because that's going to be your starting point of where you're going to add your glitter. So you see I have one exposed because you're going to have to remove one stripe anyways, so don't lay it just to remove it. So the paint that I'm using is from CCDIY. It is Color Blast Accent Stain. The only reason why I'm using this is because all of my glitter colors matched up to the colors I had on hand. So I didn't want to paint this tumbler white and then have some white exposed. I wanted to lay the paint on the tumbler like you see I'm doing here. I'm laying the purple paint on the tumbler, and then I'm adding that purple glitter over. So if you do see underneath the glitter, then you'll see the purple paint instead of... So the paint I'm using, I just purchased, I wanted to test it, and I do use paint as adhesive a lot with glitter. So I thought it'd be a fun time to try it this time. I really like the bottles, and it did turn out pretty well. But if you don't have this brand on hand and you have just acrylic paint, go ahead and use acrylic paint, and you don't have to use the same color paint as your glitter. So if you want to just use like white paint and Mod Podge, go ahead and do that. I just always prefer having the same color paint base as my glitter. And all I'm doing is placing my paint down on the stripe, making sure it's fully covered, and then applying my glitter to the space, and then peeling up the next line, and then doing the same process. It's that easy. I would say that the hardest part on this step was being very heavy-handed with the paint. I put a lot of paint in the little areas and I had a lot of excess paint. So I didn't want that glitter to clump in the areas where the paint was just like pooled. So that was probably the hardest for me. Other than that, it was kind of easy. It was just basically having enough paintbrushes on hand. But if you see, I have some water cups to the side and I would just basically clean off my brush in that water, and you can always apply paint to a damp brush. So if you don't have all of your brushes, just clean that brush off, have it damp, and then apply that to the next space. So using the smaller paint section or using the smaller tape or stripe, I did use a smaller paintbrush. It was just a little bit more tedious, and I didn't really think which way or which steps to apply or add these colors. I basically added these colors just one by one. I didn't want to go off the rainbow or anything. I just wanted to add them in random places. My only concern was to not add the same color next to each other. So I made sure to separate the colors as well as I could. Okay, so I'm gonna stop blabbing. I hope I explained the whole process as well as I could. Again, if I didn't, just go ahead and leave me a comment and I'll try to clarify stuff or steps as well as I can. So I'm gonna stop talking and enjoy this process. And once all of my glitter and paint was placed on my tumbler, I'm now going to take my painter's tape up and you'll see how gorgeous this looks even before epoxy. Make sure you're doing this very carefully. You're not cutting that vinyl if you are using an X-Acto knife like I am to peel up the painter's tape, and just peel very slowly. Because there's some dry paint, there's some wet paint. I just don't want you guys peeling up any of the paint on the bottom and accidentally peeling up the design. And once all that painter's tape was peeled up, I'm going to take a clean makeup brush or any brush that I have on hand and just wipe away any of that excess glitter that may have been placed on the vinyl, because after we do this, we're going to seal this tumbler with our Krylon clear glaze. I usually use my Krylon crystal clear acrylic coating, but sometimes if I just grab this first, then I grab this. As long as you have an acrylic coating, that's fine. What I did was I sprayed that outside 2 times before I went into epoxy. So you want to spray your tumbler 2 times before you epoxy. I sprayed 1 generous coat. I let my tumbler sit and dry for about 20 minutes, and then I sprayed another generous coat. I let that sit, and then we're going to move on to epoxying our tumbler. I am using a total amount of 50 mLs of epoxy for this tumbler. That's 25 mLs part A and 25 mLs part B, totaling 50 mLs of epoxy. One thing you want to remember when epoxying this tumbler is that your vinyl part is going to be thinner and not as thick as your glitter part. So make sure you're adding a little bit more epoxy over your vinyl area than you are your glitter area. So whenever this does smooth out, you want to make sure that you have a nice smooth tumbler. A lot of times people will add the same amount of epoxy on both areas, so the vinyl area is just a little bit thinner and it like dips in a little bit. So you want to avoid that. Also, if you do not add enough epoxy over your glittered area, then apply your first coat, let your coat dry or cure, and you can always add another coat of epoxy before moving on to decaling your tumbler. The goal is to have a very smooth tumbler whenever you're applying your decals, so you don't have any bumps underneath your decals. And apply your epoxy and let your tumbler spin on the cup turner for about 4 hours. Turn off your cup turner and then let your tumbler air dry or air cure for another 20 hours before adding your decals to your tumbler. My first step whenever I'm finished applying my epoxy to my tumbler is I take my X-Acto knife and I X-Acto the rim of my tumbler. What you'll see here is I'm trying to like sand my tumbler, but I really don't want to create any craters, so I just kind of put that to the side, and I just decided to just X-Acto knife and then wipe my tumbler down with 91% alcohol. And then I went into adding my lines to my tumbler using my vinyl. So now we're going to add our outline or lines to my tumbler, and I chose to stick with just black and white. I thought about doing like different colors, but I thought the black and white was a really nice accent since my vinyl was black and white. And all I did was I went to Cricut Design Space and I added the shape rectangle, and then I sized that shape. The width of the rectangle is 0.05 inches. Again, I sized the rectangle and I made the width 0.05 inches. Very, very thin. And I made the length like 8 or maybe 10 inches, and you'll see that it's too long. And all I did was place that vinyl on the tumbler, and then I used my X-Acto knife to clean up the edges. Again, I'd rather have that vinyl be too long than not long enough, and I have to redo my cuts. So I am using a Cricut Joy, and I know that Cricut Joys is made for like smaller cuts and stuff, so I had no problem cutting this vinyl on the premium vinyl setting, and this was just like 651 or permanent vinyl, just nothing special, just black and white. And I wanted the lines to be very, very small as I can make them, just to make it look elegant and really go with the outlines of the clouds. So when I'm applying these lines or these decals to the tumbler, what I do is I place the end of the vinyl on the tumbler, and I kind of pull that vinyl like taut, so I don't pull it enough to stretch it, but I pull it very, very lightly enough to make it taut, so when I lay it down flat, it lays down as straight as my eye can see at least. So that's kind of the trick that I have. So you lay it on its side, place one side of the vinyl on, and then pull that vinyl taut, not really tight, or that vinyl is gonna give. And then I lay that nice and evenly or nice and straight on the tumbler between each color. And once my decals were placed on my tumbler, I'm going in with my quick coat from CCDIY. This is a urethane sealer, and what this does is this allows that vinyl to really be placed on that tumbler and get a nice seal. So whenever I go to epoxy my tumbler, I don't have to worry about those vinyl pieces lifting, and this is a huge problem, especially with the smaller pieces of vinyl. All you do is you put basically a pea or dime size of this urethane sealer on the tumbler, and then you place that all around where you place your decals with a gloved finger, and you let that dry for about 20 to 25 minutes before applying your epoxy to your tumbler. And once that sealer was dried, I went in with my first coat of epoxy. I used about 20 milliliters of epoxy for this first coat, and then I applied another 20 milliliters of epoxy after this, and then my tumbler was good to go. Okay, so personally, I wanted to add a quote sideways, like from top to bottom, something very short on the striped area and like a black and white offset, but I really didn't have enough time, and I really wanted this video to be pushed out today since this is the Vinyl Cottage's Freebie Friday print. So what I'm asking y'all is what quote or what saying might look good on the striped area if it looks good anyways. So I just thought it was a little bland. I wanted something to really pop there. Again, I would put it in black writing with a white offset to really complement that other side. So let me know in the comments something bright, something fun, something positive that I can place from the top to bottom. And what I'll do is I'll take y'all's comments and I'll see what I like the most, and then I'll place it on the tumbler, and then I'll post it to my page, and it'll look beautiful, of course. And once my final coat of epoxy was cured on my tumbler, I'm going to remove my tumbler from a turner, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife for the last time and X-Acto knife the rim of the tumbler, removing any excess epoxy, and then cleaning the inside and outside of the tumbler with Dawn dish soap. And let me show you the final tumbler. And here is the final tumbler. This was so much fun to make, and I just love the bright colors. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed creating this video, and if you did, don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tumbler and craft videos. And don't forget that you can find me on all of my socials, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook for more tips and tricks on tumblers and crafts. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.